Rabbi Meszler, thanks for being with me to discuss gun violence. You are the rabbi for a congregation in Sharon. Can you
Yes,
start by just telling us a little bit about that congregation?
sure. So I am the rabbi serving Temple Sinai in Sharon, Massachusetts, and we are about 500 households south of Boston, and we're a Reformed synagogue, and we draw about two-thirds of our congregation come from Sharon, and about a third of our households come from adjacent towns like Foxborough, and Walpole, and Easton.
And how does gun violence affect your congregation and animate its discussions?
Well, gun violence affects all of us, and we get reminded of it all the time. We passed recently the 100th mass shooting in the United States, so it's always
This year,
just this year alone. And so we feel it, we all feel it. Specifically in my synagogue, we have to do things that certainly we didn't have to do when I came to the synagogue 18 years ago, which was active shooter drills and things like that in a place of worship, which we never used to lock our front door. And now you have to be buzzed in, and we have all sorts of security procedures, which has an emotional toll as well as a financial toll. So it affects us.
Jews broadly across the United States are disproportionately targeted by hate crimes. How does the current state of gun laws affect Jewish people in the United States and make them more vulnerable?
Well, there is a rising amount of anti-Semitism, and a lot of acts of hate, whether it's online or vandalism, but the threat of gun violence because of the incredibly easy access to guns in the United States always adds a more lethal dimension to what does anti-Semitism look like. And we think of Colleyville, Texas, and we think of Buffalo, and we think of other events in Jersey City and Colorado. So these are all in the back of our minds, and we feel like as a synagogue, we want to be a welcoming and nurturing place that's a place of joy, where children come to Hebrew school, and that's not what we want to be thinking about. And part of the leadership's minds is, of course, we also have to be responsible and think about that. So we have to balance this kind of warm welcome and celebrating who we are, and also being responsible and being cautious.
It's such a good point that the balance becomes imposed upon you because of endemic gun violence. What are some of the things that you have to do to prepare and prevent gun violence that you feel like undermines the other core mission that you have, which of course is to create that welcoming, inclusive community?
Right. Well, I would put it this way: we have an excellent relationship with our first responders, of course, but we also just have to somehow also lower anxiety in the congregation, especially after an event. I'll add a dimension that's unique to the Jewish community, which is that, look, if God forbid a priest says something awful or does something awful, nobody goes to the local Catholic church and threatens to shoot the place up or take hostages. But if Israel does a military action, we have to hire a police detail for that weekend services, because we, actual or perceived, get held collectively responsible for supporting everything the current Israeli government does. So that gives you a dimension that there's lots of different kinds of anti-Semitism. There's anti-Semitism rooted in white supremacy that's prevalent. There's also other kinds of anti-Semitism. So that's how it affects us in a physical way, but there's also an emotional toll that takes on congregants, and I think just on society.
What do you think Congress could be doing to both prevent gun violence and also make Jewish people feel more secure in public spaces?
I think that Congress and I think that we all could do a lot more to address anti-Semitism. I know that before Congress, there's I want to make sure I get this right, the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act, there's the HEAL Act, the Holocaust Education and Anti-Semitism Lessons Act. There's the security grant programs that help secure mosques, churches, synagogues. I think we need to take hate on the internet a lot more seriously. And I think also with much of our work in DEI, in diversity, equity, and inclusion, we need to include anti-Semitism in the discussion.
Can you talk in particular about the HEAL Act, which is Holocaust Education, and why that can be so impactful?
Well, I think that what happens is sometimes we talk about it as, the 2-week lesson in 10th grade as part of World War II history. And I think we need to think differently about how we teach the Holocaust and how we teach anti-Semitism. And can we talk about anti-Semitism today? Can we talk about the things that led up to the Holocaust, not just the murder of 6 million Jews and many others, but also how did society get to that point? How did it become acceptable? How was hate normalized? That's, I think, a lot of what we ought to be talking about.
Not just the mechanics and the logistics of a mass.
And the facts.
The psychology.
Right, not just the facts and the dates, but how did society get to normalize an abomination? How did that become so that civilized people took this as what you did for progress? And I worry about in our society, what have we normalized? What have we come to? What are some of the things that we have come to accept as normal that are unjust or maybe scary when we think about them?
Is there anything you wish I had asked you that you want to impart?
I really wish that we would understand anti-Semitism or this hatred of Jewish people as the oldest hatred, and it overlaps with gun violence, and we need to talk about it more. And I would like people to know that the Jewish community is proud to be a part of this nation and has contributed to this nation, and we're also very vulnerable. Like, I think that, Kanye West, he had more Twitter followers, that's not like 50 million Twitter followers, and when he tweeted out something anti-Semitic, he has 50 million Twitter followers. There are only 15 million Jews on the planet.
It just takes one of those 50 million to act on that hate. That's
right, and people have, and people did. So I think that sometimes part of the anti-Semitic stereotyping of Jews is thinking, these Jews are all rich and all powerful and all of these things, those are anti-Semitic stereotypes. That's not who we are. That's not real people. And what happens is that, and also that Jews are all white and Jews are all so many other things, right? And in fact, the Jewish community is diverse and it is vulnerable. It is especially vulnerable to anti-Semitism, and we can't fight anti-Semitism by ourselves. We need other people to be allies with us, and it overlaps with gun violence. The person who took the synagogue in Colleyville, Texas, hostage, he flew in. He was able to get a gun within 2 days. Right? I think he flew in on a Wednesday. He got the gun either on Thursday or Friday, and he held the synagogue up on Saturday. Well, that's a story there.
It was almost a red carpet for.
Right. He could get illegally, but still he could get a gun within 2 days and act on his